Hilchos Chametz Matzah, Perek Hey Halacha Yud. Dogan should never lot of Delef Kol Zman. Dogon that had a dripping on it. Now, the Rambam says Delef, a drip. Kol Zman Shu Toruid Teipa Achatipa, as long as it's dripping, Afilu Kol Hayom Kuloi, even if it's a whole day, Eina Bodi De Chimutz. Does not become chomistic. Avol Kishe Yifsak, once it stops, in the Shtar Kishiur, if it stops for 18 minutes, hareze also. Then it makes it also. The Maggid Mishnah cites a Bryce in Psachim 39b. Rabbi Yehuda says, flour, that if you had a dripping into it, it does not become chometz. And the Gemara says about Papa that it keeps on continuously making a drip, and that's like working it, and therefore it doesn't become chometzdik. The Gemara answers further, kemach. That's the word is flour. And the Rambam's guess is dogon, which is wheat. And therefore it doesn't mean flour. Or it could be that dogon means any grain. Whether it's in a floury in a shape it's already flour or it's still a grain. Rabbeinu Manoach explains that the drip that's coming down, drip after drip, doesn't permit it to become chometz. But once it stops, it's like you stop working on something. And then, if it's within the Kedei Hiluch, Halichos middle, that is the shear, that's the measure of making it chometz, it becomes chometzdik. And he explains, even though in the Gemara it says kemach, since the Rambam spoke in Halacha Tes regarding dogon, that was in the river, it sank in the river, so therefore he's talking about, he used the same wording, but the same din would be by flour, but there are those who disagree. Halach l'maisa, the Shulchan Aruch paskins that flour, that if you have on it a continuous drip, even all day, it doesn't become chomistic. Mishnah Berurah says, because as we learned before, that it's like working the kemach the whole time. Still, since it hits it with strength and it doesn't permit it to become chometz, even the surrounding of it. The Machaber continues that it has to be continuous. The Mishnah Berurah says, the name of Trumas Hadeshin, that they continue 1, 2, 3, 4, because otherwise you have to measure between each one. And there are those that say when it doesn't go continuously, it becomes chometz, even when you don't have 18 minutes between drips. The Machaber writes, but still you should cook it, you should bake it right away. As soon as the drip stops. The Brewer explains that you shouldn't leave it there without working it, but b'di'evad, it's only also when he left it at 18 minutes. Machaber continues, well, if you're not sure if the drip was continuous, it's also. Mishnah Berurah explains that it's a svegi deraisa. It's a deraisa a suffix, and to leave it, you can't even keep it because maybe it's chometz, even by wheat. This would be the din. The Trumas Hadeshin has the text in the Gemara, grain, and it only applies to grain, not to flour, and even by grain, you would right away have to grind it and make it into dough and bake it. On the next page, Lemaisa, the Mishnah Berurah adds that the people go to his machmir if it's flour and it's soft, because we're not sure how quickly the drips have to come one after the other. Chitin. What happens if a rodent ate from wheat? You know, what I mean, the springs. They used to check the chitin. It shouldn't be chitin that rats ate from. And there are those who were not concerned because what's the difference between the spit of a rat and the ability to make it chometz of juice from a plant, from an apple or from a fruit. So they ask a question we learned in the Mishnah. A person shouldn't chew it and put it on. It shouldn't chew grain and put it on his wound because the spit does cause it to be considered to become chometz. So we see that spittle is different than juice. So you can't say that the spittle of a rodent does not cause it to be chometz without proof to what you're saying. Furthermore, that you mix water into it anyway, so that you have spit with the water, and then even by May Paris we say it would make it chometz. He cites further the name of the Torah that the chash is very distant to say that chitza would become chometz with just a little bit of water, and the amount of spittle in the mouth of in the mouse is very small. That even when you put water to take off the husk with water, we said that you could do so. Just the Goinim said you shouldn't do so because we're not sure how much time you leave it to take off the husk. And even if there are rodents should have bitten it, it's only 1,000th of the pile. And even will say that that became chometz, it becomes bottle according to their when he grinds it. And even though you shouldn't be mevatel in the hatchilo, here there's no isser because he doesn't grind it to mevatel it. It just happens to be that we don't have to search it out. And if they ate from it, and this was more prevalent years ago when they weren't able to seal off the buildings from the achmorim, from the rodents the way they do today. Chita shenirtavu mizeya. Now, something we have what's called condensation. The walls have condensation. If the wall condensed and gave off water, what is the rule of that condensation? Now, goes Maimonides cites in the name of Rabbeinu Baruch. Once they found tzoyas tarnagolis, or a wet excrement of a chicken, on a bag of flour, and it came before his rabbis and they permitted it. Or if they found some sweat from the cellar where they store the flour sacks, they permitted it. These arrive from the Sechta Machshirim, which has to do with water touching something to make it able to or capable of receiving tumah. And there it says that the walls of the houses is not considered water as far as being touched by water to receive tumah. Torah writes, but the flour should be sifted, and anything that's coagulated like flour should be thrown out. The rest is permitted. You have to put it through a sieve, and what's wet, like dough, you throw out. Halacha l'maisa, the Shulchan Aruch paskins, a bag full of flour that became wet from the walls condensation, it's permitted. The Mishnah Berurah writes that's true when it's a wooden wall. That's also sweating. Doesn't matter. It becomes because there's not enough air to dry out. That the walls sweat, or if it comes from water that's in the walls, like a wall that's made from new blocks. At times, the blocks themselves have water in it that sweat out over time because they haven't dried out yet. Or a wooden wall that the wood is still wet. In any case, this sweat does not cause it to become chometz. But we find regarding the law of tumah that it's not called water. Still, it's no better than Mayperis. According to what we said, that Mayperis with water causes it to become chometz much quicker. You shouldn't use it for the dough of Pesach to begin with. Poskim say that if the zayah comes from heat and humidity, of water that's found in the room, like there's something, water, it's a pot is cooking, and the steam is going up. That's what's causing the water to condense on the walls. And that's why it became wet. Everybody agrees that that's water. And it becomes chametz. It causes chametz. The Machaber cites that there are those who forbid also kemach that became wet from the wall sweating. And Mishnah Berurah explains that here is the opinion that you don't learn chametz from Echshetuma. Regarding chametz, any water has the power to make it chametz. Whereas when it comes to tumah, it has to be water that the person's happy about. And the sweat that comes from a wall of stone or wood has wetness of water. And he concludes, the din, meaning la halacha, we go according to the original thoughts that we don't worry about chametz, like the Mechaber says to begin with, muta. And Mechaber says muta, and then he brings those who disagree. The rule is that you go according to the first statement. But one should be careful to begin with of those who say it's also, but you can definitely leave it till after Pesach. If you want to use it in this Pesach, this flour for Pesach, you can do so if you have nothing else, no other flour, no other food, through sifting it. Then even if the kemach became dry, he can throw it out, and the rest he can use. But if something happens like this, a person should ask his Rav, who's a Boirei Rav, and you tell him what to do.